Good morning and welcome to this digital service of First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. My name is Birch Spick. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs, and I'm a member of the celebrant team at this congregation. Our celebrant this morning is Bill Paxson, our pianist is Bruce Martin, and our song leader is Barb Martin. As we gather this morning, let us do so knowing that wherever we are on Indigenous land. The land our congregation's building is built on is in the traditional territory of the Bahoje people, known also as the Iowa. This service today is at the same time about tarot and not about tarot. I offer it to talk about the importance that reading tarot cards has had to me in my life, both as a spiritual and self-reflective tool. At the same time, I offer this service to talk more broadly about the importance of finding tools and practices that can show us a new way of looking at the situations of our lives. In the spirit of that, our opening words are from a poem about finding arrowheads in a field, but more deeply about what we can overlook by fixing our perspectives in one particular way. These words are by Jared Carter. Convictions liable to say straight off, this one's leaf, or that one's merely clay, and miss the point. After the rain, soft furrows show one way across the field, but what is hidden here requires a different view. The glance of one not looking straight ahead, who in the clear light of morning simply keeps wandering across the rows, letting their own perspective change. After the rain, perhaps something will show, glittering and strange.
We light our chalice in this hour, that in its glow, as in the light of the morning sun, we may let our perspectives change. Our gathering song this morning is number 16. We'll sing this once through and the lyrics will be posted in the chat. Please keep your mics muted and join us in singing from home. Good morning, my name is Bill Paxson. My pronouns are he, his, and him, and I'm the celebrant for this morning's service. Whether you're here for the hour, for a lifetime, or somewhere in between, thank you for joining in this community that grows ethically and spiritually, serves justly and loves radically. This digital service is being recorded and will be available to view later on the church's website and YouTube page. Feel free to keep your cameras on, but keep your mics muted in consideration of each other. After the service, turn your mics back on and stick around for a virtual coffee service for conversation, fellowship, and your favorite snack or drink. Our Faith in Action partner for July and August is One Iowa. One Iowa's mission is to advance empower, and improve the lives of LGBTQ Iowans statewide. Their vision is to seek to improve the lives of LGBTQ Iowans by protecting and advancing equality and inclusiveness through education, improving workplace culture, and increasing access to quality health care across our state. Their work includes educating Iowans about the LGBTQ community, training healthcare providers, law enforcement, business leaders, and others to ensure LGBTQ Iowans are respected in every facet and stage of their lives. Promoting policies within state and local government to protect the rights, civil rights, health, and safety of LGBTQ Iowans. Empowering tomorrow's LGBTQ leaders through training and mentorship, and connecting LGBTQ Iowans with vital resources.
Thank you, Bill. Our special music this morning is by our very own Doug Hoffman.
They say luck is a lady who visits at her whim. You cannot call her to you. She will see right through you. You know you'll want her near when your last chances grow slim. They say truth is a beacon whose light will set you free, but the easy lie attracts you, contradicts the facts you casually forgotten, thinking no one else will see. They say luck is a lady, not just happenstance. You should get to know her if you ever have the chance. She is whimsical and wild, and sometimes even cruel. But if you try pursuing her, you will only find a fool. They say patience is a virtue whose practice will allow your dreams to come before you. Multiply the more you resist the common urge, demanding satisfaction now. They say luck is a lady, not just happenstance. You should get to know her if you ever have the chance. She is whimsical and wild, sometimes even cruel. But if you try pursuing, you will only find a fool. They say time heals the wounded, and I won't say that is wrong. So if your wounds have left you beaten and bereft, you take another breath and do your best to carry on. They say luck is a lady, not just happenstance. You should get to know her if you ever have the chance. She is whimsical and wild, sometimes even cruel. If you try pursuing her, you will only find a fool. They say luck is a lady who might be sent from Hades to bring pestilence and rabies, or perhaps septupled babies. But it's possible that maybe she will smile on you.
Thank you, Doug. Our story for all ages this morning is about how one character can be seen so many different ways, from so many different perspectives, and still, at the end of it all, appear in a completely unique way. This is They All Saw a Cat, written and illustrated by Brendan Wenzel, and read by Denise Jackson.
They All Saw a Cat by Brendan Wenzel. The cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. And the child saw a cat. And the dog saw a cat. And the fox saw a cat. Yes, they all saw the cat. The cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. And the fish saw a cat. And the mouse saw a cat. And the bee saw a cat. Yes, they all saw the cat. The cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. And the bird saw a cat. And the flea saw a cat. And the snake saw a cat. And the skunk saw a cat. And the worm saw a cat. And the bat saw a cat. Yes, they all saw the cat. Yes, they all saw a cat. A child, and a dog, and a fox, and a fish, and a mouse, and a bee, and a bird, and a flea, and a snake, and a skunk, and a worm, and a bat. The cat knew them all, and they all knew the cat. And the cat walked through the world with its whiskers, ears, and paws. Then it came to the water. And imagine what it saw.
These words to mark our offering this morning come from Jessica Dorr's Twitter, where each day she offers a tarot card and a short accompanying reading. This card draw is from early June of this year and focuses on the Ace of Pentacles. The first card in a suit, often associated with wealth, but also principled behavior and material manifestation. Today's card, June 3rd, 2020. Values are defined as a person's principles or standards of behavior, which means that a value is behavioral, not ideological. So keep in mind that What you value will be determined not by what you say is important to you, but what you physically do in this world. In the stewardship of our community, which we care for and which in turn cares for us, our actions, what we are willing to give of ourselves, reveal our values more clearly than our words. So in this offering, let us be grateful for all that we have and all that we can give. Outside of our physical church, instead of passing the offering basket, we encourage you to use the giving page on the church's website or mobile app. The link will be posted in the chat. In this congregation made distant by space, but connected by care for one another, we gather each Sunday to bear witness to the joys and concerns in our lives, and to minister to each other however that may need to happen. When we are together in person, we lift up the names of those people we hold in our minds and our hearts, aloud or silently. You are carrying someone in joy or concern this morning, you may share their name and your thoughts in the chat box. Let our hearts be also with all those near and far, with people the world over who are in need of care and who care for their communities. For protesters and those injured and arrested while speaking out against injustice. For frontline workers in healthcare and service industries. For families and communities grieving the loss of loved ones. May we bear witness to atrocities that flash before our eyes in quick succession, to the struggles to overcome which we have not yet seen. In this community, it is our tradition to light 3 candles, one for the joys and concerns we have shared, for the names we have written, and for all that remains unspoken but present here in our hearts.
Our first reading is from the introduction to the 1997 edition of 78 Degrees of Wisdom by Rachel Pollack. In the winter of 1969-70, I was teaching English at the State University of New York in the town of Plattsburgh, near the Canadian border. Linda, one of my fellow teachers, did not drive, and even though she lived only a 10-minute walk from campus, would sometimes wait an hour or two for someone to drive her home. One day in early 1970, Linda offered to do a tarot reading for me if I gave her a lift. I remember nothing of that first reading other than the impact the cards had on me. I knew nothing like them. Their bright colors, their vivid yet mysterious scenes, their strange figure with exotic names, the magician, the high priestess, the hanged man. Linda was not an experienced reader. For many of the cards, she consulted a book. Rather than lessen the allure, this only heightened it for me. For the cards and the text seemed a kind of art form all its own. Like Linda, I began reading with the cards in one hand and a book in the other. Some of those early readings still astound me when I think of them. If the readings intrigued me, something else excited me more. One afternoon, another teacher came by, and we went through the cards one by one, ignoring the book now, and just playing with the pictures. Ignoring the conceptual structures, as well as the predictive formulas. We just looked for stories, working from the pictures, but also the author's descriptions. I remember the moment when I realized that the tarot opened to worlds beyond their surface scenes and official symbolism. So began my study of the cards, not from texts or symbolism or diagrams, but from the pictures themselves.
Let us enter now into a time of meditation, thought, or prayer. Our words this morning are from Jessica Dorr's Twitter, from her card pull yesterday. Today's card. The thing about initiations is that we rarely go into them willingly. We do too much, get mixed up with the wrong crowd, drift so far offshore that we can't see the edges. And when we lift our heads, we come to realize we're lost. But nothing is ever lost, only transformed. Breathe in and breathe back out again. Feel your feet on the ground, your hands in your lap, your eyes closed. Whatever helps you come to the center of this space, to a meditative spirit. Breathe in and breathe out again. What do we come to know, initiated into the unfamiliar? What urges us to become transformed in the growing light of morning, leaving what is behind, behind? Breathe in and breathe out. Feel your feet on the ground, your hands in your lap. Eyes open again. Come back into this space.
Our second reading is from Using Tarot in Psychotherapy by Jessica Dorr. For decades, the psychology field has employed tests that utilize ambiguous visual images to reveal underlying, unconscious, or difficult to communicate needs, beliefs, and response patterns in patients. Just like the Rorschach and the thematic apperception tests, a set of classic tarot cards portrays ambiguous images of humans in a wide range of situations. Though tarot cards do not function in quite the same ways as projective testing methods, when the cards are used correctly, they can help to better understand the patients and to help them better understand themselves. Tarot cards can provide fresh perspective to a stuck situation. We all have blind spots, and sometimes, despite our best efforts, we simply do not and cannot see the full spectrum of possibilities available to us in any given situation. Because tarot cards function solely through random selection and synchronicity, they have the potential to touch on our blind spots in a way that few other tools can. Tarot cards are also a unique way to tap experience that is otherwise difficult to verbalize. Talking about inner experience does not come naturally to many. Whether it's because people are so fused with their thoughts and feelings that they cannot describe them objectively, or because the weight of shame or fear of judgment holds them back from expressing the truth about their experience, inability or unwillingness to talk about inner turmoil can thwart or determine or undermine their can thwart or undermine the therapeutic process. An evocative image on a tarot card offers a way for people to talk about an otherwise difficult to express inner experience in an objective way, if that feels safer and more comfortable for them. Ultimately, tarot cards can provide an avenue for challenging psychological material to come forth in a way that feels safe. We will now sing song number 352, Find a Stillness. Please keep your microphones muted as Barb leads us.
True
What is hidden here requires a different view, the glance of one not looking straight ahead, letting their perspective change. A couple of years ago, I had reached a place in my life where it was difficult to see my situation just by looking straight ahead. Maybe you have been there too. I was in the middle of some growing pains. In the span of a few months, I had started a new job, moved to a new apartment in a new city, and had begun spending more time with a new group of friends. It all felt wonderful and fulfilling and overwhelming, and I struggled to keep my head above the water. All of these sudden new changes in my life were hard to process together, and I felt increasingly overrun by it all. Journaling and talking through this hadn't helped as much as I had hoped, but at this point, I had been working through a tarot deck, studying each card one by one, and felt like this might get me out of my rut and into a new field of vision. I drew up a spread, and I asked myself questions about the nature of this situation and what had led to it, and what needed to change in order to move forward. At the time, and still to this day, I was most moved by the card I drew describing the change I needed to take. The card, called Temperance, seemed to tell me to take it slow, careful, easy, to pay attention to what I was taking in and what I was giving out in my life, and to make sure that I was processing and reacting to my life, and that I was mindful of these things. Given the whole situation, it helped me be more conscious of my emotional relationship with the world, and to pay attention both to how I was processing and reacting to my life. While this was a fairly small experience on the face of it, I look back at this and see a place where the practice and the importance of tarot really clicked for me. And in the years since then, I've continued my study of tarot to further refine my practice and philosophy, at times sharing these musings and experiences with the people in my life. So to articulate and share some of this, I offer you this sermon. As I mentioned before, this is a sermon about tarot, and at the same time, ultimately, it is not about tarot at all. It is a sermon about a spiritual awareness-building practice that has helped me a great deal, and it is a sermon about the way that I have learned to turn over and examine myself in whatever situation I might land in. Here, I will say, it is also about the importance of creating such a practice and a discipline in order that we may all continue growing. To do this, I will spend some time talking about tarot as a tool, a practice, and a discipline. But rather than giving a lecture on Tarot 101 or plumbing the depths of my spiritual musings on the subject, I offer a balance of these things that I think will all give us something in common to work with. I don't profess to be an expert on this subject, and I only speak from my own experiences. Tarot has fostered a discipline of seeing my world differently when I am stuck or in need of guidance. It is a way for me to feed my thoughts and perceptions through a filter other than I would use moment to moment. So underscoring everything else, this is a sermon about finding and using those tools to help each of us become more aware of our lives and of our world. My journey with tarot, however, did not begin with this clarity or conviction. When I began, I was a young teenager, maybe 13 or 14. My first deck was one I bought at Ancient Ways here in Des Moines. when it was on 17th and Woodland in Sherman Hill. That first deck is the deck that I still use the most often. It's a pocket-sized edition of the Rider-Waite deck, a traditional deck widely used by teachers, students, and practitioners. As soon as I was out of the shop and back in the car, I immediately opened the box and began flipping through cards. I was transfixed. The bright colors, the symbol-laden images, it was like having a hierophany, with the sense that I was connecting to something deeper and more expansive than myself, like I was coming in contact with the holy. But the initial enthrallment gave way to a feeling of being up against an insurmountable task. How was I supposed to memorize all of these cards, knowing what all 78 of them meant with every reading? I never felt like this was something I picked up just for fun or for the mystique of it, but at the same time, I was daunted by the requirements of the discipline. Like Rachel Pollack in our earlier reading, I began my first few readings with the cards in one hand and the little white book in the other. It felt exhilarating at first, like I was on the verge of tapping some hidden power. But going back and forth between book and reading soon became exhausting and unsustainable. The magic I felt had fizzled. I put my cards away for years, thinking of them sheepishly on occasion, and in the meantime sifted through books and internet articles to find different perspectives in the hopes that I would find something that would stick and help me find a way forward. What follows now is something of an account of what I have learned in those years. We can begin talking about tarot itself as a tool, as something material. All variables aside, there are some constants. The first of these, with few exceptions, tarot decks have 78 cards divided into two parts. The first of these parts, often called the Major Arcana, is a series of 22 cards. Each card has a name that is at once evocative and somewhat outside of our ordinary context. Names such as the High Priestess or the Hanged Man. In more traditional decks, the scenes and characters they depict can have an archetypal feel. We can see they depict something specific connected with their title, but the implications of these might sit just outside of our reach. The second part of the deck, often called the Minor Arcana, bears more similarity to the contemporary deck of playing cards. It is divided, like our playing cards, into 4 houses, with 4 heads, often styled as members of a royal court, and cards numbered 1 through 10. Other decks may portray them more sparsely, bearing closer resemblance to the playing cards we might be commonly familiar with. As I came to discover, tarot is an incredibly varied practice. There are almost as many ways to read and derive meaning from cards as there are readers. Readers begin by pulling cards from their deck with some kind of randomized selection. This could be through shuffling or randomly pulling a card from the middle of the deck. A reader will then build a spread to answer a specific question. Spreads can involve as few or as many cards as you want. Each card usually speaks to a particular dimension or elaboration of the question at hand, and together help provide a fuller answer to the question. As you can imagine, this gives the reader quite a lot of freedom to fit their reading to the demands of the situation at hand. Some situations need a simple answer, one that is clear to help us refocus. Other situations will present us with more to untangle and parse in order to make sense of them. Once the cards are before you, the method of interpretation can also vary widely. Some people read cards through a faithful memorization of the meanings of each card. They may have seeped hours, months, and years into committing to heart the meaning of cards like the Lovers or Seven of Wands. No matter the deck, no matter the spread, no matter the query, each reading is composed of the immutable meaning of each card involved. On another hand, other readers may spend little of their study in committing the meaning of cards to memory, focusing more intently on the visual details of each card and the stories it can tell. For them, a card's meaning could vary by deck, by spread, by query, even by reader and querent. Each card has the power to evoke something different each time it appears, like a story that shines a little brighter and a little bit differently with each telling. And of course, there are many ways between and beyond these. There is no right or wrong way to make sense of what's before you in a reading. What's right, what's helpful in overcoming the gaps in our vision will depend on the reader and the querent. In our first reading today, we heard Rachel Pollack touch on some of these methods and her relationships with them. Over the course of her studies with tarot, she came to focus less on rote memorization and pay more attention to the stories that the cards were telling alongside each other. As I read her words while preparing this service, I saw my own process of learning to read in the words of another. When I first began, I felt intimidated by the pressure to memorize each card and imprint that memorization into every reading. I avoided reading tarot for years because of this. But with time, a more narrative approach helped me overcome this intimidation. It took an oracle deck that wasn't a tarot deck, one that wasn't even meant to be taken seriously, to help me really get into the rhythm of strictly reading what the cards were telling me alongside each other, and not overthinking what their immutable meaning might be. While a narrative approach still helps me no matter the spread, no matter the deck, at a certain point I realized I couldn't rely on it solely. As I continued my practice, I found I worked really well with the more archetypal cards of the Major Arcana. But this narrative approach would leave me stuck with the Minor Arcana, whose symbolism can build within a house from one card to another, and in and of themselves, they might not say a lot of obvious things. From here, I worked my way toward a sort of compromise or cooperation between rote memorization and spontaneous narrative. At the time I described at the beginning of this sermon, I had begun an almost daily practice of pulling a tarot card, meditating on it, and at the end of the day, free writing about my impressions of it. Without relying on a book to lead me fumbling along, I used this practice to develop a sense of what each card could tell me. And as I worked through it, I found other disciplines of self-awareness shaping and coloring my interpretations of the card. At that time, I was part of a union reading group at this congregation, and much of our class's examination of personality, ego, shadow, and interpersonal dynamics transformed the interpretive work I did in this practice. And as I did this work, I saw a lot of the issues I was trying to untangle at the time come undone and become a little clearer. I was able to see the pieces of my situation that before had been so obvious I took them for granted and overlooked them. This is where I think Jessica Dorr's perspective of tarot becomes really informative. In her article we read today, she discusses some of the therapeutic and cognitive ways that tarot can be helpful. She writes this from her perspective as a psychotherapist for the use professionally of her colleagues. But what she touches on here points to some of the reasons I've found tarot to be broadly useful in shifting my perspectives. Tarot cards can provide a fresh perspective to a stuck situation, she writes. Sometimes, despite our best efforts, we cannot see the full spectrum of possibilities available to us. We cannot see past the mental and emotional scenery we have grown accustomed to. Tarot reading, I have found, shakes this scenery up by injecting a new set of symbols and visions into our interpretation of the situation. It urges us to express the situation before us in new words, in new phrases and symbols in order to see differently. She further suggests that tarot can give us words when we think we have none, presenting us a way of articulating situations we find hard to evoke or verbalize. Through symbol and imagery, it can give us new ways to connect the dots of our challenges. In our reading today, she talked about how tarot helps us get around our blind spots and can help us process experiences that are hard to verbalize. And this is, over the years, the purpose I've found in tarot practice. If Rachel Pollack has touched on the way I do tarot, Jessica Dorr has helped me understand the process behind why it's been so impactful. In the story I opened this sermon with, I was faced with a complex situation that felt at the same time too big and too personal to fully parse and wrap my mind around. By identifying questions about the situation, though, and then feeding them through the imagery of the cards, I could focus on something just adjacent enough of my present situation to help me process it and see it through to the other side. That reading I gave myself 2 years ago is one that I have returned to and drawn guidance from many times since then. What I've found, no matter the reader, their philosophy, or their practice, is that if the reading helped you answer your question and move forward in your life, then it worked. Tarot is a tool and a practice which leads me to a discipline of seeing things differently, of asking, how can I look at this situation in a way that makes sense? What am I overlooking? What do I need to take a step back from? Tarot has presented a combination of many different things which come together to help me work through problems and mental blocks. It gives me a disciplinary structure to follow through with finding the answers to my questions. The discipline I've found in all of this is a practice to step back from my questions without running away from them. Tarot has taught me to slow down with finding answers to my problems and the situations I find myself in, to thoughtfully break them down into manageable pieces, to find ways of turning them over until I can see clearly. In it, I found a place just right, a way of living that allows me to be centered and grounded in my life, better able to weather the turns and bends that I might encounter. A way to this in your own lives is what I want to leave you with. What will help you build a discipline to see past stuck situations and onto fresh perspectives, to realities and visions we were previously unable to articulate? Perhaps for some of you, it will be another form of divination, perhaps journaling or guided meditation, or any number of other practices. Perhaps it will look nothing like tarot at all. Perhaps, though, it will be a way to help you keep growing.
Though we go from our time together and from the light of this chalice, may we leave neither of these truly behind. Let's carry the light that was once before us, now within us. We'll now sing song number 120, Turn Back. The lyrics are in the chat room, in the chat.
Our closing words are by Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace. The service has ended, and our service to the world and our lives begins again. Peace, Ashe, and blessed be.
Ours a religion which like sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple of space, its shrine the good earth, its creed of truth, its ritual works. love.
The service is ended. Please feel free to